Hey people, this is Fernando doing our video for the Modern Survivalist, and today I'd like to show you guys the best revolver ever made. And a lot of people think that would be the Colt Python, which is a fantastic gun as well. It's a fantastic revolver, beautiful. I actually think it's the most beautiful revolver, the most beautiful handgun ever made. Just looks fantastic and something most people will agree with. It also shoots very well, has a very fine trigger. No, it's not made of glass, it doesn't fall apart as soon as you shoot it. Yes, it does require a certain maintenance if you're gonna be shooting full power 357 Magnum loads frequently from it, because it has, you know, certain characteristics that require for you to do so. Now, if we're talking about the best revolver ever made, the Manurhin MR73, the ones that I have here in 5 1/4 inch barrel and 4 inch barrel sport version. Sport version would be the one that has the target front sight. The gendarme version would be the one that has the snag proof front sights and the smaller rear target sights. Now, I know that some of you guys are already thinking, hey, I've read some of your previous writings, your posts, I read your book, The Modern Survival Manual, Surviving the Economic Collapse. I've read your stuff. You've always said, get yourself a Glock pistol. It's the best gun you could possibly have. Yes, it absolutely is. Yes, it is the gun you should be buying as a modern survivalist. The gun that if you invest your time and money so as to master and be proficient with it, this is the one you should be getting. Right, and I explain more about my take on survivalism, shit hit the fan, guns, and whatnot in my book. The link is gonna be there below. I'm not changing any of that. And the thing is this: we're talking about a certain philosophy that, ironically enough, is strongly linked to the MR73. In fact, you cannot talk about the MR73 without talking about the GIGN, the Groupe d'Intervention de la Gendarme Nationale, the Special Operations Group Anti-Terrorist Unit of France. Those same guys that still use the MR73 are using also the Glock 17, and I just love that. Many of them actually carry both. You know, they have their Glock and they have their MR73 357 Magnum revolver as a backup, or using it at times as a main gun, depending on what they feel works best for the specific mission. That's just fantastic and speaks volumes of the philosophy behind this special force group. Now, the MR73 is very unique in many aspects. It's the toughest revolver, the toughest 357 Magnum revolver ever made, as far as I know, accurate as well. It is a gun that was in its origin specifically made for special forces. The thing is this: in France, there was a period after World War II where criminals were using kind of firepower that hadn't been seen before. After World War II, there were automatic pistols, submachine guns, assault rifles, grenades, explosives. There was a ton of weaponry floating around Europe used by criminals in France. There was also the need, specifically after the Munich massacre, for a special operations group, specifically an anti-terrorist group. For that, they put in charge a man called Christian Prutot, who had a very specific idea of what he wanted to do with his special operations group. It started, in its origin, GIGN was not about killing, it was about saving lives. And you could argue with that in terms of philosophy, but the philosophy Christian Prutot had was, we are not a group that's about killing, we're about saving. And if we're gonna be touching someone as a last resort with a bullet, it's gonna be only once or twice. More than that, it's poor accuracy. That was his pretty much his exact words in terms of philosophy for his group. So it would be one of the only cases that I know where a special operations group went from having an issued 9mm semi-automatic pistol such as a PA Mag 1950 from that to a 357 Magnum revolver. The idea was maximum power per shot, maximum accuracy, and that was what went into the training and the gun that they ended up with. They first started using the Smith & Wesson, the Model 19. Now the Smith & Wesson 19 is a great firearm, but is intended to be only used sporadically with 357 Magnum. It's intended to be used with 38 Special for practice, for training, and keeping 357 Magnum in it for duty use. So it's not intended to be shooting frequently 357 Magnum. Now, for the kind of shooting, the kind of precision that Christian Pruton intended for his special operations group, he needed to shoot a lot. And they were shooting every single day 150 rounds of full power 357 Norma Magnum rounds of 158 grains. That was putting about 40,000 rounds of full power 357 Magnum through the revolvers per year. No revolver could take that. Neither Smith & Wesson nor Colt. They were just not intended for that kind of use. The guns were made of rather softer carbon steel, and they would just stretch, fall apart. Just not what the market had in mind for these kind of revolvers. So what happened was very unique in terms of, we had the commander of the GIGN going to the Ministry of Defense and saying, hey, I need this revolver made. In that case, very unlike what typically happens with these military contracts. Think of the drama recently with SIG P320 and the Glock 19X, where there's politics involved. How much does it cost this, or what does it look like that? None of that happened here. He just requested something, and it was turned to a manufacturer that was capable of doing that. What they did was this firearm that you see, the MR73. It's a really similar in shapes of frame to a K-frame, slightly larger than the K-frame, but made with a special ordnance steel. It's more like a tool steel, hardened and made to a degree of toughness that no other revolver simply has. It's not only tough and very durable, it was tested to see how durable it is. It was determined after extensive testing that it would be needed at least 300,000 rounds of full power 357 Magnum before you saw any loss of accuracy from this gun. No other gun is capable of that. You're thinking maybe the Korth. The Korth never had that kind of test being done, and what Willie Korth said was that his gun was going to be as good in terms of accuracy for at least the first 50,000 rounds, even though it was actually never tested, but that was what it was said. Also, in terms of accuracy, no MR73 left the factory if it was not capable of putting 15 rounds within a 20mm circle at 25 meters. In comparison, the Colt Python Elite was advertised as putting 5 rounds within a 2-inch group at 15 yards. So that's the kind of accuracy you have from this gun. It is made specifically with a double action trigger that's very short. It is just beautiful and shoots very well in double action. Usually with revolvers, you kind of want to have to, cock the hammer and shoot in single action. With this, after a little bit of practice, you see how great that double action is, and it's very accurate in double action and very fine in single action as well. This is a gun that is very highly regarded in Europe for target shooting. That's something that I know for a fact. I know that is the case. This one I got from a target shooter who prided himself in shooting only very light 38 special loads because he was a target shooter, and he had regulated to just, it was not regulated for maximum reliability. I actually had to adjust that, which is very easy in the MR73. It's that rare kind of case where I don't know of any other revolver that can go from the tactical use, from the user's holster, from a special operator, to the target shooting range and performing just as well in international bullseye shooting competitions. The MR73 can. Now, when you take away the grips, you have 2 sets of screws to adjust 2 springs separately. The first spring is a screw about here that adjusts the spring of the hammer. The second screw, it's about here, and it adjusts a second spring that adjusts the trigger mechanism. And what actually happened with me was that this gun was regulated mostly for shooting in single action only. So it had been regulated, the trigger, all the way down so as to shoot only in single action. It barely returned when releasing the trigger. That was how the guy used this revolver. Knowing what the gun is and how it works, I quickly addressed that little issue. But it just speaks to, you know, volumes of the quality and precision of these guns. The way these are made, beautiful guns as well. That finish, check that out, it's like oil. Super black. If you see some of that footage, these are used in underwater operations. You see, those 70s videos are just fantastic. Now, it was not just about a philosophy. It actually ended up going down in use as well. There's actually an account of a GIGN operator shooting a suspect during a prison riot. The suspect was keeping a hostage at gunpoint, and the GIGN operator shot him in the shoulder. And when the suspect tried to grab the gun with his other hand, he shot him in the other arm. If you check out those vintage videos, you see that they're shooting specifically for the shoulder in some cases. It was not just a philosophy, it was just what they did. And they had to be very good at that. No, I would not recommend shooting to wound. No tactical unit today does that sort of thing anymore, as far as I know, shooting to wound. But these guys were capable of doing that because of the level of training that they had. Maybe the most iconic moment in which the MR73 was used was in the hostage rescue of the Air France flight 8969 in 1994. The hijackers, Islamic terrorists, had taken control of a plane, and the GIGN intervened. They went in, and there's a movie about it. It's called The Assault. Very good movie. I recommend it very highly. It's just fantastic, and it just shows exactly how it went down very well. So the point man for that operation was Thierry Prugnot, and he went in with this exact same gun, an MR73 with a 5¼ inch barrel. The only difference would be the sights. He went in as a point man. He went to the cabin where he kills one terrorist with one round, a second terrorist with another round from his 357 Magnum, wounded a third terrorist, a third Islamic terrorist, before a fourth Islamic terrorist with an AK-47 open fire and shot him. He got shot like 7 times. Then a grenade was thrown at him. He managed to survive all that. Interestingly enough, he survived after several operations. His right hand was wounded severely, and the gun itself was destroyed because of the gunfire that he received. Now, Manurhin sent him another MR73 for him to use, and he learned to use it with his other hand and kept on shooting, practicing target shooting with his MR73. How cool is that? He went in with this revolver even though Glocks, SIGs were already available. In fact, in that operation, the first shots fired against the GIGN ended up in a SIG 228, which ended up exploding, detonating the rounds in the magazine. So these automatic pistols were already available and in use, but his decision was to go in first with the MR73 against Islamic terrorists armed with Uzis, AK-47s, and grenades. And he ended up killing 2, wounding the 3rd, and surviving and saving 150-something hostages in the process. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up. It's pretty amazing. Now, do I recommend the MR73? Of course, I absolutely do. I liked it so much. My original idea was to get an MR73, get a Python, and then get maybe a Korth. The thing is, I liked it so much, I just went with another MR73 instead of the Korth. I get it that the Korth is the most expensive revolver and that sort of thing, and it's a fantastic revolver in its own right. It does not have the mystique. It was never designed as a tactical use revolver. that is you know, a great target shooting revolver, a great tactical use revolver that takes hundreds of thousands of rounds of 357 Magnum. You can use a second cylinder with a second 9mm cylinder in these revolvers. You know, that's nice and all. 357 Magnum for me is where it's at, the way it was mostly intended to be used. Fantastic guns, beautiful as well. I have the rubber grips for this one, but the wood ones are very comfortable. Yeah, if you find one, and I explained this in my book as well, if you're gonna be taking it yourself seriously, practicing a lot, get yourself your Glock, train, shoot that. If you're not gonna be practicing as much as you should, and you're gonna be just having a minimum safety training with a firearm, get yourself a revolver, a 357 Magnum revolver, 4-inch barrel, maybe shorter, maybe a 2-inch barrel, depending on where you're planning on using. Maybe if you're someone in a smaller apartment, a 3-inch or a snub-nose revolver would work. Mostly because of the user interface. Revolvers are, no, they're not as reliable when it comes down to torture tests in terms of sinking this in the mud and that sort of thing. A pistol is where it's at, and again, the GIGN uses these both, and it's going to be relying when it has to put a lot of rounds down range. They're going to be grabbing this, and they still keep this as a powerful, accurate shot, and I just love that about the philosophy that they bring to it. But a 357 Magnum revolver for someone that is not going to be training as much as they should so as to master an automatic pistol is my suggestion as well. Yes, this would be kind of the best possible you could get. These are not cheap either, and there were some floating around in the US second-hand market, but a good smith will fill the bill just as well. Now, if you can get yourself an MR73, it is absolutely worth it. Folks, it's gonna be all for now. Remember to subscribe. Take care. See you on our next video. Have a great day.